In the far north, there is a village called Viking Berk. The people here are big, brave, and good at fighting. They have lived by fishing and raising livestock for generations. However, this seemingly peaceful land is covered by a nightmare. While other places may only be disturbed by rats, this village is often disturbed by dragons. The hot fire burns the ground, threatening the lives of the villagers. Whenever the dragons rage, the chief Stoic will lead everyone to hunt dragons. At this time, a special young man appears in the crowd. He is Hiccup, the son of the chief Stoic. Unlike the strong and muscular Stoic, Hiccup is skinny and weak and always confused when fighting. Therefore, every time the dragons attack, Hiccup is always forbidden by his father to participate in direct battles. However, Hiccup never gives up his dream of hunting dragons himself like his father. Of course, there was also a personal meaning to it, because the girl he secretly loved was Astrid, a brave warrior. So he was eager to show off his abilities in front of her. Just when he was daydreaming about successfully hunting dragons and being admired by the villagers, the most mysterious dragon in the legend, the Night Fury, suddenly appeared. This dragon never stole food and almost never appeared in human society, but their attacks were extremely powerful and precise. No one had ever successfully hunted a Night Fury dragon, so Hiccup decided that he would be the first. Hiccup took advantage of the moment when his father was not paying attention to push the homemade shotgun that had been carefully prepared in the direction of the Night Fury and fired. Unexpectedly, Hiccup accidentally shot the real target, but the next second, a dragon appeared right behind Hiccup. The hot fire followed behind, causing Hiccup to panic and run away. Luckily, at the critical moment, Hiccup's father arrived in time to rescue him, so Hiccup was safe and sound. Not long after, the dragons carrying the stolen food flew away at lightning speed. Stoic was busy cleaning up the mess, but Hiccup chased after Stoic and happily told him about his feat of shooting the Night Fury. However, no one believed what Hiccup said. Even his father thought he was lying. Stoic's face showed extreme disappointment. Being suspected by his father made Hiccup feel extremely sad, but after calming down, he still wanted to prove his ability to his father. So the next morning, when no one was paying attention, Hiccup sneaked out of the room to go find the injured Night Fury by himself because he had shot them. On the other hand, in order to completely eliminate the threat from the dragons, Stoic decided to change his strategy. Stoic summoned all the warriors in the village and proposed a plan to switch from passive defense to active attack, because only by destroying the leader of the dragons can the villagers have lasting peace. As soon as Stoic finished speaking, the warriors unanimously expressed their approval. Then Stoic assigned the blacksmith Gopper to be responsible for training the children on the island to teach them the skills of dragon hunting. Seeing that, Gopper suggested that they give Hiccup a chance. Finally, under Gopper's persuasion, Stoic nodded in agreement. However, at this time, Hiccup had gone in the direction where the Night Fury dragon fell. Hiccup went deep into the mountains to search. Not long after, Hiccup followed the traces on the ground and found the Night Fury dragon that he had shot. His heart immediately filled with excitement and confidence, because as long as he defeated this black dragon, he could prove himself to his father and the villagers. So Hiccup took out the dragon slayer knife and gathered all his courage to move towards the legendary Night Fury dragon. However, just as Hiccup was about to make a fatal blow, he accidentally made eye contact with the black dragon. The helpless and desperate look in its eyes deeply haunted Hiccup's heart. Seeing the dragon slowly close its eyes and give up, he couldn't bear to kill it. After hesitating for a long time, Hiccup put down the dragon slayer knife. Instead, Hiccup cut the rope that was binding the Night Fury. However, the next second, the black dragon rushed in front of him. It used its cold and fierce eyes to stare at Hiccup, making him tremble all over because of the strong pressure. Just when Hiccup thought he would definitely die here, the Night Fury dragon only opened its bloody mouth wide, let out a piercing scream, then turned and flew away. However, due to the serious injury, the black dragon flew unsteadily. Hiccup watched it leave with a complicated expression. In his heart, there were also indescribable emotions. When night fell, Hiccup was still afraid. Finally, Hiccup returned home. Unexpectedly, Stoic had been waiting for him from Hiccup. Stoic said that he had registered Hiccup for the dragon-slaying training camp. However, after what had just happened in the valley, Hiccup knew clearly that he could not do anything to a dragon. However, Stoic seriously said that every child in the village had to learn how to slay a dragon. Stoic finished speaking and hurriedly left. The next day, the dragon-slaying training camp officially opened. The friends of Hiccup's age were all full of enthusiasm and considered slaying a dragon a great honor. At this moment, Hiccup suddenly appeared. When everyone saw this weak friend, they could not help but mock him. Just as they were about to fight, the blacksmith Gopper entered the yard and signaled that today's training session had officially begun. Then Gopper opened the iron gate behind and released an ugly but adorable Gronko dragon. This was a dragon with a weak bite. It was most suitable for training new recruits. However, Gopper had overestimated them. They had just started training, and several people had been eliminated one one after another. At this moment, Astrid suddenly appeared to help neutralize Gronko's fourth flame. Unexpectedly, the shield that fell rolled to Hiccup's side and immediately attracted Gronko's attention. The fifth flame erupted, forcing Hiccup into a corner of the training ground. Fortunately, Gopper came to his rescue just in time. He then took this opportunity to emphasize to everyone that dragons were inherently aggressive and unreasonable, so they had to be vigilant on the battlefield. But Hiccup did not agree with these words. Hiccup remembered the Night Fury dragon yesterday and felt that people's perception of dragons might be wrong. To confirm his suspicions, Hiccup once again went to the lake where the Night Fury dragon disappeared. Unexpectedly, Hiccup discovered that the mysterious black dragon was stuck in the lake. No matter how hard it tried, it couldn't take off. After careful observation, Hiccup discovered that its tail was seriously injured. When a dragon loses its balance, it naturally can't continue to fly in the sky. Hiccup became even more interested in the Night Fury dragon. After returning to the village, Hiccup couldn't wait to flip through all the illustrated books about dragons, but there were very few records about the Night Fury dragon. So what secret did this mysterious dragon have? On the other hand, Stoic led the warriors onto the boat and began their journey to hunt dragons. However, the boat had just entered a narrow body of water when it was suddenly attacked by a group of dragons without any warning. Although the effectiveness of the proactive attack was not high, the dragon hunting training still took place on time on the second day. Hiccup, with a lifeless face, continued to cause trouble for his teammates. In the end, Hiccup was rescued by the others. With great difficulty, Hiccup overcame the terrible training session. Hiccup's happy mood was also not much left, but under the urging of intense curiosity, Hiccup still brought a big-headed fish back to the valley where the Night Fury dragon lived. At this time, the Night Fury dragon was hiding behind a rock. Its eyes were extremely wary and distrustful. Seeing this, Hiccup quickly pulled out his dagger and threw it to the ground in front of it, then kicked it away. Then Hiccup carefully held the fish closer. Although the Night Fury dragon was still in an attacking position, the hunger that had lasted for many days made it unable to resist the appeal of delicious food. It opened its mouth wide and took the fatty fish in front of it. Thus, a magical friendship sprouted. Seeing the unique mouth of the Night Fury dragon, Hiccup gave it a cute name, Toothless. But in fact, Toothless was not toothless, but it was just that when facing Hiccup, it was always careful. Because it was afraid of accidentally hurting Hiccup, it hid its teeth. At this time, Toothless had not eaten enough. Suddenly, it approached and stared at Hiccup and continued to ask for food. When it knew that Hiccup only had one fish, Toothless tilted his head and thought for a moment, then suddenly released half of the fish tail and used his eyes to signal Hiccup to eat. Hiccup could only smile awkwardly when faced with Toothless's carefree sharing. Then Hiccup pretended to be resigned and took a few bites of raw fish. The sour taste made his face grimace. Seeing that, Toothless even imitated Hiccup and smiled. Hiccup's face was blank. Hiccup couldn't help but reach out to stroke Toothless's head, but Toothless arrogantly turned around and flew away. Then it landed on the ground and exhaled hot breath, creating a warm nest for itself and sleeping comfortably. Hiccup took the opportunity to continue touching Toothless, but was caught by Toothless, so Toothless had to hang upside down on the cliff to rest. However, during that time, Toothless's eyes occasionally glanced at Hiccup. When Toothless saw Hiccup intently drawing himself with a tree branch, Toothless suddenly approached curiously and held a small tree in its mouth and imitated Hiccup's creative painting on the sand. Although the lines were simple and messy, Hiccup was extremely happy. Dragons are indeed different from what humans have recorded because they still have a simple and lovely side. And so the trust between a human and a dragon grows deeper. When Hiccup once again reached out to pet Toothless, it even took the initiative to rub its head against his palm. But this innocent black dragon was still shy, so after a short time of contact, it immediately turned around and left. When Hiccup returned to the tribe, he saw everyone gathered around the fire, listening to Gobber's heroic stories of hunting dragons. However, Hiccup remained silent the whole time because now his dream had changed. He no longer had any interest in hunting dragons. His mind was filled with the lovely image Toothless. He couldn't understand why humans and dragons couldn't live together peacefully, so a bold idea slipped into his head. Hiccup returned to his room and stayed up all night sketching out plans to install an artificial tail for Toothless, who was injured and unable to fly, so that he could once again soar in the sky. Early the next morning, Hiccup brought a basket of fatty fish to the valley. While Toothless was enjoying his meal, Hiccup carefully circled around behind and installed the artificial tail he had made for him. However, Toothless immediately realized something was wrong, so he suddenly spread his fangs and flapped his wings to fly up. But at this time, the tail was not fully open, causing Toothless to quickly lose his balance. For a moment, they almost crashed into the cliff. Luckily, Hiccup used all his strength to pull the artificial tail out, and the airflow immediately lifted them straight into the sky. Hiccup also became the first person person to ride a dragon. However, not long after, an unexpected incident occurred. Toothless, suddenly excited, turned sharply, causing Hiccup to fall straight into the lake. Toothless also lost his balance and staggered into the lake below. The first successful flight test made Hiccup full of confidence. He was determined to continue improving the artificial tail. After dozens of failed tests, Hiccup finally gradually found the key. The combination of leather and wooden bones was gradually improved from the original manual transmission that required 2 hands to an automatic transmission system linked via foot pedals. After continuous testing, Hiccup recorded every change of the artificial tail, representing different flight modes. After dozens of days of practice, the coordination between Hiccup and Toothless became more and more compatible, and their feelings also became deeper during their time together. Toothless even allowed Hiccup to freely pet its head. During their days together, Hiccup also discovered many habits and weaknesses of dragons, so he applied them to training. Soon his performance was outstanding, and he won the respect and recognition of his friends. However, this change of his attracted the attention of Astrid. Being the strongest dragon hunter of the new generation made her eager to find out the reason why Hiccup became so strong. So after completing the training, she carefully followed him into the forest. But because she was unfamiliar with the terrain, she quickly lost track. Thanks to that, Hiccup and Toothless's secret was temporarily not discovered. Not long after, Stoic led the dragon hunters back to the village. This trip not only failed to reach the dragon's lair, but they also lost dozens of people in the tribe. Stoic's face was extremely ugly, but at this moment, Gobber suddenly proudly told about Hiccup's excellent performance in the training ground. This made Stoic extremely surprised. Stoic did not expect that his skinny and useless son, who only knew how to cause trouble on the battlefield, could do such a thing. At the same time, Hiccup was riding Toothless flying in the sky to continue testing the different functions of the artificial tail. Being able to flap his wings to fly again made Toothless extremely excited. He couldn't help but flap his wings to fly higher, but the artificial tail suddenly couldn't bear the weight, causing Toothless to lose balance again. Hiccup was riding on the dragon's back and was the first to be affected. But fortunately, while diving down, Hiccup successfully grabbed Toothless's belt and sat back on its back. Then, Hiccup decisively stepped on the pedals to adjust posture and angle of the artificial tail. At this time, they had a narrow escape. They crossed the canyon and safely continued to fly in the air. Hiccup returned home to continue thinking about how to improve the artificial tail. But at this moment, his father suddenly burst into the room. Stoic immediately asked Hiccup what the secret was. At the same time, Stoic also said that there was nothing on this island that he did not know. Stoic's words immediately frightened Hiccup, thinking that his and Toothless' secret had been discovered. However, Stoic suddenly burst out laughing in the next second. It turned out that Stoic was happy for Hiccup's training achievements. Stoic was so emotional that he spoke incoherently and then solemnly handed over his wife's keepsake to his son. Stoic hoped that Hiccup could inherit his career and personally kill a dragon. Hiccup thought that his forest father's recognition was a step too late. Now Hiccup was no longer the teenager who longed to hunt dragons like before. So Hiccup used the excuse of being sleepy and wanting to go to sleep to end the conversation between the two. However, life had to go on, so soon the dragon hunting training camp's qualifying exam was almost over. Hiccup put on his helmet and used his fastest speed to kill a dragon and was awarded the title of True Warrior by the village elders. This result made Astrid both worried and angry because it was clear that she was the best student at the training camp before. So Astrid once again followed Hiccup. Finally, she discovered the valley that contained the secret. Astrid rushed to ask Hiccup who he had recently met here, and, of course, Hiccup could not tell about the existence of Toothless. When the two were struggling, Toothless thought Hiccup was injured, so he suddenly rushed out to protect his friend. Seeing that, Hiccup quickly grabbed Astrid's axe and threw it away. Seeing that, Hiccup stood between the two to try to ease the tension, but Astrid was still startled by Toothless's sudden appearance as a night fury. She quickly turned around and wanted to leave. To avoid the secret being exposed, Hiccup decided to order Toothless to grab Astrid and put her on the towering cliff. Astrid felt her life was in danger, so she reluctantly followed Hiccup's request and climbed onto the dragon's back. Hiccup knew that it was useless for him to reason at this time, so he directly signaled Toothless to take off. When Astrid personally experienced the appeal of flying, she finally gave up her resistance and took the initiative to pet Toothless and apologize to him. Astrid had just finished speaking when Toothless also gave up his flying performance and flew with the two of them. Astrid also couldn't help but reach out and caress the clouds. At that moment, Astrid completely let go of her prejudices about dragons. Astrid also understood the dilemma in Hiccup's heart at this moment. She took the initiative to ask about the content of tomorrow's test and how to deal with it, because the test content was to kill a dragon with your own hands. Hiccup said that he would find a way to convince everyone everyone. But Astrid thought that this idea was unrealistic. Was Hiccup planning to take each villager on a dragon flight? Moreover, humans and dragons had a deep hatred for a long time, so it could not be erased overnight. When the two were about to argue, Toothless suddenly felt something. It could not control itself and flew straight in one direction at an extremely fast speed. What was even more frightening was that on the way they crashed into countless dragons with ferocious and terrifying appearances. On their claws hung a bag of food. Hiccup did not know what was happening, so he could only hug Toothless tightly to avoid falling off its back during the collision. But not long after, Hiccup discovered that the destination of this group of the dragons was the lair of the Dragon King. It was this Dragon King who ordered the group of dragons to steal food and livestock from humans to satisfy its always hungry taste. Whenever a dragon fails to deliver food on time, it is immediately devoured by the Dragon Queen. At this time, the Dragon Queen seems to have sensed the presence of humans. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Toothless took the two people out of the dragon cave. At this time, they also understood the reason why this group of dragons attacked the village. It was because they were forced and could not resist. After returning to the valley, Astrid wanted to tell the villagers about this, but Hiccup was afraid that Toothless would be hurt, so he begged her to keep it a secret for now. Hiccup believed that when the time was right, humans and dragons would achieve true peaceful coexistence. But would everything go as smoothly as Hiccup thought? The next day, the final exam for the dragon hunting course was held on time. Everyone was looking forward to Hiccup's performance. Stoic also proudly announced that his son would be the next dragon hunting ace. But amidst the loud cheers, Hiccup was only holding a short sword. Compared to the fiercely burning dragon, his equipment had no chance of winning. But this was exactly what Hiccup wanted. He was determined not to hunt dragons anymore, but to use his knowledge of dragon habits to subdue the ferocious giant monster before him. He threw down his weapon and took off his helmet, preparing to prove to the villagers that humans and dragons could coexist peacefully. But at this moment, Stoic, afraid that his son would be injured, suddenly roared. The giant dragon, which had calmed down, immediately sensed the danger and furiously attacked Hiccup. In this moment of crisis, Toothless in the valley heard the cry for help. Toothless realized that Hiccup was in danger, so even though he could not fly yet, it still rushed to the training ground, regardless of the danger. At this time, the field was extremely chaotic. Astrid wanted to help Hiccup push back the giant dragon, but it was useless. Finally, Hiccup was knocked to the ground by the dragon's claws. It seemed that Hiccup was about to lose his life in the dragon's mouth. At this time, Toothless was like a black lightning bolt swooping down and spitting out hot flames, pushing back the giant dragon. Not long after, the giant dragon panicked and retreated to its cage. However, at this time, the training ground exploded because in everyone's eyes, there was only the legendary Night Fury dragon. Immediately after that, all the warriors raised their weapons and rushed forward to try to destroy Toothless to prove their strength. Because of his self-defense instinct, Toothless fought with the Viking warriors. The situation became uncontrollable, so Hiccup quickly called Toothless and signaled him not to harm anyone. Toothless obediently gave up resisting while the villagers subdued him. Stoic angrily locked Toothless up. Because of this, Hiccup had a big argument with Stoic and accidentally revealed the dragon's lair. Stoic was immediately shocked after hearing this. He ignored his son's objections and immediately summoned the warriors in the village, fully equipped to set off for the dragon's lair right away. Stoic ordered someone to tie up Toothless and force him to lead the way for him. Hiccup watched helplessly as everything happened and hated his impulsiveness even more. At this time, Astrid suddenly came to Hiccup and encouraged him to cheer up because Toothless was still waiting for him to rescue him. Hiccup was deeply moved by these words of encouragement. Hiccup regained his courage and went with his friends from the dragon hunting training camp to the prison where the dragons were held. After that, Hiccup used his own way to tame several giant ferocious dragons in preparation to ride them to support his father. In another development, under the leadership of Toothless, the dragon extermination team successfully reached the dragon's lair. The Viking warriors landed one by one and set up traps around the lair. Stoic took his weapon and walked forward. The army loudly declared that today they would exterminate all the dragons. As soon as he finished speaking, the catapults began to operate. The fierce collisions had strongly broken the cliff. Then two spotlights were thrown accurately into the cave. Seeing countless giant dragons before his eyes made Stoic extremely surprised. But things had come to this point, so he could only stubbornly advance and fight. However, the strange thing was that these giant dragons did not attack, but instead, they quickly flew out of the cave as if they were avoiding something. Toothless also became restless at this time. Soon all the dragons in the cave had flown away, causing the Viking warriors to look at each other and not expect things to go so smoothly. But they did not know that the danger had not yet been dispelled. Suddenly, the entire mountain began to collapse, followed by a dragon roar. The next second, a giant dragon hundreds of meters tall rushed out, causing rubble to fall from the sky. Stoic hurriedly ordered everyone to quickly retreat. But in front of such absolute power, humans were as small as ants. The entire army was immediately engulfed in flames. As the clan leader, Stoic bravely stood up and tried to attract the Dragon Lord's attention to protect the lives of others. Seeing this, Gopper stayed behind to help. However, the attacks from the catapults were like scratching an itch for the Dragon Lord and did not cause any damage at all. Right at the moment of death, a fireball suddenly flew towards the Dragon Lord. It turned out that Hiccup and his teammates had arrived on the tamed giant dragons in time. The group coordinated flexibly and well together to quickly successfully restrain the Dragon King. This brave action inspired the people on the ground. They then joined the battle together to restrain the ferocious Dragon King. Meanwhile, Hiccup took the opportunity to rescue Toothless. But just as Hiccup was about to unchain the boat, the Dragon King stepped into the sea, and Toothless was also dragged into the abyss by the chain. Seeing this, Hiccup immediately disregarded the danger and rushed forward. But no matter how hard Hiccup tried, he could not unchain Toothless. Just as Hiccup was about to fall into a coma, a large hand pulled him to shore. It turned out that his father had arrived in time. Stoic did not wait for his son to say more before jumping into the sea, decisively breaking the iron chain that was binding Toothless. Even at this moment, that stubborn warrior finally let go of his prejudice against dragons. After being freed, Toothless grabbed Stoic and flew back to shore. Hiccup saw that his father was safe, so he immediately jumped on Toothless's back, ready to fight. At this moment, Stoic finally understood his son's heart. Stoic said that no matter what happened, Hiccup was still the son he was most proud of. Hearing that from his father, Hiccup became even more confident. Hiccup and Toothless flew high into the sky. The dramatic final battle was about to begin. At this time, his friends on the battlefield were starting to get exhausted. Seeing Astrid in danger, Toothless immediately increased his flight speed and at the same time breathed out hot flames that accurately interrupted the Dragon King's fatal attacks. Then, with a beautiful spin, he easily caught Astrid, who was falling, and put her in a safe position. Then Toothless continued to flap his wings and fly high. At this moment, a bold plan popped into Hiccup's head. He wanted to take advantage of Toothless's speed to wear down the Dragon Lord's stamina and endurance. Hiccup pushed the artificial tail control lever to level 5. Toothless flew straight into the sky and entered the thick clouds. The Dragon Lord did not accept it, so it followed closely behind them, but the clouds obscured its vision and could not find any trace of Toothless. In addition, flying for a long time was not its strong point, so the Dragon Lord soon lost patience and began to attack like crazy. Although Toothless turned around flexibly to avoid it, the fire still caught on the artificial tail. Seeing this, Hiccup immediately controlled Toothless to dive down at an extremely fast speed. Just as the Dragon Lord was about to deliver a fatal blow from behind, Toothless and Hiccup understood each other and immediately seized the opportunity to turn around and spray fire, detonating the dragon fire that the Dragon Lord had not yet sprayed. The Dragon Lord lost his balance in pain and immediately fell to the ground like a meteor, creating a huge explosion. The powerful shockwave threw Hiccup into the sea of fire. Toothless did not hesitate and rushed into the fire, trying his best to save Hiccup. Stoic on the ground saw this and quickly rushed into the sea of fire, but he only saw Toothless seriously injured. He thought his son was gone, so he was in great pain and realized he had made a big mistake. The other Viking warriors were also filled with sadness and self-reproach. But at this moment, Toothless slowly opened his eyes to look at them and then spread his wings to reveal the unconscious Hiccup inside. At the end of the story, Hiccup woke up, but the fierce battle caused him to lose his left leg, just like Toothless lost his left tail. The wounds were all their medals. But from this moment on, the relationship between humans and dragons finally changed. The war that lasted hundreds of years finally ended. The human race that was originally proud of hunting dragons finally coexisted peacefully with dragons. Hiccup was not only respected and loved by the tribe, but he also received a new artificial tail. Thus, Hiccup and Toothless could once again soar in the sky. The movie ended here. Goodbye, and see you again.